Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Valentine's Day special. Here we are, a day after the Brighton game, breaking it down. I was at work last night, unfortunately, which prevented us from recording, and so many, like a whole barrage of technical difficulties has led to this podcast being as delayed as it is. So I can only apologise for that. But Dan, the dust has settled on last night. Brighton 0, Aston Villa 1. First of all, how are you feeling, mate?
I'm good, mate. Very happy to be spending my Valentine's Day with the true loves of my life, which is obviously yourself and all the kind subscribers and listeners of the Villa Filler podcast. Sorry, it's a little later than normal, but as Dan was saying, things that are far beyond our control. Honestly, the lawsuit set up against Zoom is coming, isn't it? It's pending. It's just a couple of weeks away at this point. But no, I'm good, mate. Last night wasn't exactly the performance for the ages. We've certainly seen Villa play a lot better. But, I think perhaps if we're looking at it on the bright side, mate, perhaps recording it the day after, the emotions feel a little bit different than it did yesterday, I suppose. And for you guys, it means you guys had to slept on it, and perhaps you're coming into this with some different opinions than you did last night, which I'm hoping for, because we're not all doom and gloom on this podcast, are we, mate?
No, that's not what we're about, but it's kind of, I don't want to say hard not to be, because obviously it was a brilliant point at home against Arsenal last time round, but we weren't really great against West Ham, and despite getting the win at Southampton, it wasn't at all convincing. It was real backs against the wall stuff from Villa, and it felt like that for a lot of last night. Villa never really seemed to get into a rhythm at all. Brighton, gotta give them full credit for how they attacked this game. They play so well. As we mentioned in the quick preview that we did, they moved the ball very nicely. You were seeing them passages of play on their left-hand side. And if it wasn't for the fact they don't have a clinical striker, Brighton would have won that game about 3-0. Villa, they didn't come close at all. I think the XG, to bring it up, Dan, is 2.87 for Brighton and 0.17 for Aston Villa, which is disappointing. And a few people have been tweeting, look, don't look at XG for how you view a game and how you should win or how you should lose. But, there's ways XG can be interpreted. And, I mean, just interpreting Villa's 0.17, you're never going to win a game. You don't deserve to win a game with an XG that low. We didn't come close. I think I only recall one or two shots maybe, Dan, last night. And, Martinez really kept Villa in the game. He was peppered with so many shots, but, for Brighton in between the sticks for Sanchez didn't have too much to do, which I think the word that I used then, rhythm, that we haven't seen a rhythm from Villa for a little while now, and it's slightly concerning. And I got into a debate with someone in the comments, Dan, after the Arsenal podcast, who called either one of us a hypocrite for praising Dean for his substitutions that he made after we berated him for not making them against Southampton. But that's why we praised him. And to be fair, Dean made the changes. Some of them, albeit, were forced. Obviously, Matty Cash came off injured. We saw Sanson only got 15 minutes. Maybe I'd change that. But I don't know. It was the only thing inspiring to me, Dan, is the fact Villa were able to keep the clean sheet. Emi Martinez is worth his weight in gold. And I think he said it himself in the post-match interview, with his attitude, and what he was saying was, he did his job. And although he didn't say it, it very much felt like the subtext was the other, 10 people around me, okay, maybe minus the back four, the other 6 outfield players weren't necessarily pulling their weight, Dan.
No, you're absolutely right, mate. And look, we'll come on to Enemy, and I bet we'll we're probably just going to run a whole section of the pod on him after yesterday, because he's really the only player that you can single out for any praise. But yeah, that XG that you mentioned for Villa, 0.17, is the lowest expected goals value that we've put in since our return to the Premier League, which, when you consider how bad we were at points last season, is pretty shocking. The first half especially was absolutely terrible. I thought we showed a little bit more at points in the second half. But no, Brighton were all over us, mate. That's their record set for most shots in a Premier League game. They racked up 26 yesterday. And it was. I think that you're starting to see the problem, mate. Before the game, in the pre-match interviews with Dean, they're almost praising him for making the least changes to a starting 11 of any side in the Premier League. And Dean was saying that the players don't want to be dropped, and I don't want to drop the players. And there's this beautiful harmony where he's sending the same faces out week in, week out to go and do a job, and they're getting it done. So why change it? But the problem is this, mate, and it's funnily enough, is the same problem with the Martin O'Neill sides, which we're starting to reference more and more as the teams in terms of points and wins, they start to draw parallel with those sides. You don't make changes, you burn out. The players get time when you're playing as many games as you are. The players burn out. The same happened with Martin O'Neill. I mean, that 08-09 side, which is before the 9-10 side, which we've been debating recently. A praise for making it into Europe. But the fact of the matter is they were in the Champions League spots until about February, March time, at the same time as we are now, and they fell off and they finished about 5th or 6th, I think. But the fact of the matter is we probably should have finished in the Champions League that year, but because Martin O'Neill didn't have that plan B, which we've sort of seen with Dean Smith, the players just tire, and I think that's what we're seeing. We didn't match the same intensity. We didn't hit those passing rhythms. There wasn't those same nice little passages of play in the midfield and that quick counter-attacking nature, which we're fine with giving Brighton most of the ball, but when we're not able to draw it off them and hit them with counter-attacks of our own, that's when the concern starts creeping. And I think that's the product of just seeing the same faces week in, week out, mate. And for the second time this season, I felt it was pretty harsh to drop Marvelous Nakamba. And it's those kind of changes that whereby you need to start giving Sanson minutes. You need to start giving Marv minutes when he deserves to play. That I think is starting to hinder this team now, because the players just seem shattered, mate.
Yeah, they do. And, I've seen plenty of people on Twitter going, this isn't the same McGinn, this isn't the same Louise, whatever. It is just, it's got to be fitness levels, mate. It has. If you look, I'm going to reference the average position that we saw the side line up, and it's heavily favouring the left-hand side. You've got Bertrand Traore essentially in the middle of the pitch. You've got Ross Barkley inside left. You've got Ollie Watkins just next to him. You've got Jack Grealish wide left as well. So there's this giant gaping hole down Villa's right-hand side, which again comes at no surprise, as we know Brighton did attack that side of the field heavily throughout the game. But Douglas Luiz is almost on top of Ezri Konsa in terms of these average positions. And that is, for me, quite worrying, because Konsa is, he's fairly reliable, very rarely puts a foot wrong, very quick on the recoveries. We've seen that many times. We've seen it in the Arsenal game. He's quite reliable, but seeing Louise that close to him, for me, that's not a worry about Konsa. That's a worry for me about Louise. He needed the legs around him. He needed help. He's found himself sinking deeper and deeper because he just doesn't have the, he doesn't have the gas in the tank, mate. And McGinn looked very out of sort as well last night. It's a frustrating one, because there are, I feel like we can't just come on here, Dan, and go, it was the fitness, because to be fair, Brighton, they moved the ball about quickly. Villa just weren't at it. They weren't. And it's, you've just got to look. Brighton, they outpassed Villa so much. 537 passes from Brighton compared to 389 from Villa. 23 crosses. Now, that's, Villa can deal with crosses like that fairly, with relative ease. Villa have improved defensively. I very much trust Mings and Konsa in dealing with them balls, but the fact that 23 crosses were allowed, you've got to ask serious questions of the fullbacks. You've got to ask serious questions of the wingers. Of course, they've got to help back when an overload is being created. Villa played 58 long balls and only 322 short passes. Dan, for me, that just screams desperation. It really does. Emmy spoke about in his interview. He was saying, he about all of his accurate passing, that, which is brilliant. Absolutely amazing for you, Emmy. If all you can do is punt it long, though, because you've got no options, mate, that ain't your fault. That is the fault of the team. And with context, these stats are quite worrying. Of course, Villa, we're sitting in a very healthy position in the league. Dan, I think we're still 8th, 2 games in hand. Of course, the Sheffield United game has been moved. I actually think the week break didn't do Villa any favours, Dan. We've been going back to back to back, and it kind of felt like, when you're kind of in the trenches, you go in, you don't have the time to worry about the next game because it's straight back into training, straight into recovery. You go, you battle on. Of course, I mean, a week, of course, it's gonna be more beneficial for the players' bodies than that. I'm not disputing that. I just feel like there wasn't that level of awareness, and there certainly wasn't the levels of intensity that we've seen. Certainly, throughout the rest of the season. But I guess we haven't really seen that since the turn of the new year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, mate. I think, to be honest with you, and this was my frustration with the initial substitution, is that I felt like this game was won and lost, or neating word, but we lost control of that game in the midfield. That was my personal opinion. I thought that's probably the worst we've seen of McGinn and Louise in a long time. But the concerning thing is that the midfield went away from us in the Burnley game. The midfield went away from us in the Southampton game. The West Ham game, in the second half, it slipped away from us in the Arsenal game. And it's not even like we slipped away from us yesterday in the Brighton game, because I'm not sure we ever had a grip on it. We gave away the ball. We gave away the possession 61 times in the first half alone. 61 times in the first half. It's crazy, mate. We had 3 touches in the opposition box. I felt like McGinn and Louise just got lost out there. And that's why... I felt a little bit aggrieved with the Traore for Trezeguet substitution, because again, it's that trademark substitution that we see time and time again. I don't think Trezeguet added anything that we hadn't seen from Bertrand. In fact, I felt pretty aggrieved because Bertrand, the best moment of the game, where I don't know if you remember, Bertrand had the ball on that left hand side. He released Grealish on the right hand side. He played a really nice crossfield pass to set Jack free. Jack ran into traffic and it came away with nothing. But it was probably our best attacking situation of the game, and it was integrated with a pass from Bertrand, and as soon as he did that, he was taken off. And I think in so many situations where this season where Bertrand Traore has given us a goal literally out of nothing, I felt it was pretty harsh to take him off. But that's the problem, mate, is this lack of plan B, and it smacks in this game, but also in games we've conceded. We've only managed to take 1 point from the 9 games in which we've conceded a goal, which tells you that once we go behind, once the odds are against us, this Villa side really do struggle to get out of that situation. We watched Leicester yesterday, and this is something I'm going to touch on in the preview that I do with you guys. But Leicester went 1-0 down yesterday, playing a 4-2-3-1, and they had this pre-discussed plan where they went behind. They were going to switch to this 4-4-2 diamond. Barnes and Vardy were going to go up top. The game literally flips on its head in an instant. Leicester win the game 3-1. We don't have that ability.
No.
And that for me is the most concerning thing. Look, Villa, when things are on top and when the games are going their way, and when that Villa formation is really working against an opponent, we're unstoppable. We really, really are. But when the odds are against us, and look, Brighton are a bit of a bogey team for Villa, and vice versa. Whilst Villa haven't lost away at Brighton since 1980, Brighton have never done a league double over Villa. In the last 7 league games in which we've gone to Brighton, they've just seen 8 goals in those games. Neither side have managed to score more than 1 goal in a game in that run. 5 draws, each team has won a game each. Those games at the Amex are really tough. We do really seem to struggle there. So there's an element of that. But look, before we get too sucked into the negativity, mate, this was the tweet I made off the account yesterday. We played terribly. That's probably the worst performance we've seen from Villa this season, in my opinion. I don't think we've seen Villa look as hopeless as that.
Yeah.
But we kept a clean sheet. We came away with a point. And it's that ability, mate. It's not the most glamorous trait. And I feel like perhaps concerningly, I'm starting to reference this more often. But that ability to go to sides that play pretty good football. If you want to look at the XG table, Brighton are above Villa this season in terms of XG. So it's a side that are really underperforming despite this goal scoring situations that they're creating. Yeah. To be able to go down there and play terribly and come up with a point and a clean sheet, is that the worst ability to have in a team? I don't think so.
No, well, that XG table that you're referring to, of course, Brighton sit 15th in the actual table and are 7th in the XG table, or 6th, I believe, and we're 7th, actually 8th. So, if you want to interpret XG like that, Villa are performing well. Brighton, of course, are underperforming. That's fair to say, as I said earlier on. They're a clinical striker away from being in that position, to be perfectly honest, which is a shame. But, just to refer to how... and I'm going to use the word inept. The midfield was how it just wasn't there, Dan.
Yep.
There are the players that had the total most amount of shots during this game. The top 5, first of all, are all dominated by Brighton players, of course. Villa only had 4 attempts on goal. You've got Alexis McAllister, who's top, who is, he just ran riot, didn't he? Kind of in the hole, operated as more of a traditional number 10, but was afforded the space to do so because, as we referenced earlier, Douglas Luiz, he's finding himself sinking deep and deep and deep. And you had McAllister and Trossard, who were playing very nice combinations, playing very close together, which caused a lot of problems for Villa. But the player that had the 3rd most amount of shots in this Brighton side, Dan, is Dan Burn, who plays like a geography teacher who is, playing in the, the GCSE PE games. I can't believe he's a Premier League player. He had 4 shots. We're talking about a centre-back that had 4 shots. And he really did test Emi. Emi made a few decent saves from his efforts. So fair play to Dan Burn. Don't want to criticise him too much, but yeah, he does look like a geography teacher. And again, I think what's worrying, Dan, is you look at this game. If you look at the West Ham game, teams are now figuring out a way to keep our man Jack Grealish quiet. Joel Veltman, as I highlighted in the preview, did an incredible job. He absolutely did a number on him. Villa would have done better if Tariq Lamptey was fit. I think we saw that. Jack got the better of Lamptey. Veltman, of course, has the experience.
Well, Lamptey got sent off, didn't he?
Of course, yeah. It was late on, but he did get a red card in that game, mate. And that's where it comes down to, where we're wondering where these tactical changes are coming from, Dan. Not only just in the substitutions, but as you referenced to the fact that Brendan Rodgers had the flexibility to change his system in game, and then within 8 minutes his side had scored 3 goals. You don't see that from Villa. And yeah, okay, for the West Ham game, we saw Grealish drift out to the right and he got his assist for the Ollie Watkins goal. But we didn't see that today. And we only saw that on that one occasion against West Ham. And although, it's hard to argue Jack's effectiveness out on the left in terms of his goals and assist contributions, if it ain't working, something's got to give. You got to change that. You can bring off McGinn, or you can bring off Louise, or you can bring off Barkley and make that Trezeguet substitution and keep Bertrand on, who I completely agree with you, Dan, was totally, I'm totally aggrieved that he got pulled off, and he should be too, because he didn't really do much wrong. He didn't really have much to do, but bringing on Trezeguet didn't really effectively change the game. Whereas if you're going to put Jack in the middle, you're changing the whole dynamic as to how Brighton 100%. Defend the game. You're forcing Brighton to then make a change tactically in the game, which, hopefully Villa end up benefiting from. And, just looking on the Who Scored website, they've got an array of fantastic stats, but they do a brief summary for each game, and they list strengths, they list weaknesses, and they list the style that both teams played throughout the game. Under the strengths for Aston Villa, Dan, this team has no significant strengths. That tells you everything, man. Villa were not at it, and partially down to fitness, but it's also, we were tactically outfought, and we didn't have that flexibility in game. And listen, to refer to that guy who was beefing in the comments, we can't just football. Dan and I, we maintain a fairly consistent view on Villa, we feel. And when it comes to things like substitutions, I can't say Dean is a master tactician. He gets his substitutions right every single time, because that's something that changes game by game. And when he doesn't, and when we feel he doesn't get it right, we have to criticize that. And when we feel he does, then we have to praise him for that, because we can't criticize him without praising him for doing the thing that we criticized him for the week before. That I know that this is just one person, but I felt like I had to address that because I feel like that guy really missed the mark on what we were getting at there. We have a fairly consistent point of view, we feel, and I know you guys appreciate what we do, but that comment really did bother me. It really got under my skin. And he said he unsubscribed, so whatever. But here we are. You know, it's we don't want to lose you guys. That's
right
the thing.
In the feeler. Right in the feeler.
That's
honestly,
the thing,
man.
Do you know what? It's people know what we're about on this podcast, Dan. I think he may be misinterpreted what we said. But here we are. We've got Leicester coming up next, and we'll briefly talk about that because, again, I did the preview for this Brighton game, and I feel like it's totally my fault because I had this idea, I ran it with Dan, and I didn't let you guys in on it. So it's my fault. Don't worry. These podcasts, they're not going anywhere. We just want to try and create as much content that is possible for you guys. Me and Dan are, studying, trying to complete our degrees and that. So it will depend, but we feel like we're at a point in time now where there's a decent time between the games. Of course, we're still going to preview the game at the end of these reaction podcasts as we do, looking at how we performed, how, we're going to take that into the Leicester game. But sometime next week, Dan will be back with another, 5 reasons why Aston Villa can beat Leicester in 150 seconds, which, I say, these podcasts, they're not going anywhere. We're just trying to create as much content for you as possible. Dan and I are going to rotate it on a weekly basis. It was great to see so many of you in the comments saying that, you love the podcast as it is and not to change it. So, of course, we're not changing the podcast. And to all you guys who were enjoying the shorter stuff as well, much props to you. That means the world. It's just allowing us to do something a bit different because this is a conversation. And for me and Dan, we want to put a bit of I don't want to say effort, make it sound like the podcast is no effort, but honing our creative skills, doing a bit more proper editing and stuff like that for you guys. That's what we want. So Dan, of course, you're going to preview the Leicester game. That Leicester game against Liverpool, I mean, man, as we referenced to earlier, Liverpool, just on a side note, I think we genuinely ruined Liverpool, Dan. But I'd always dread playing Leicester. The last game I went to with fans, Dan, at the King Power on a pouring night, walking through the streets of Leicester with Heart of the Holte contributor Jamie. It was a miserable night, man. That was a really tough one to take. And, Brendan Rodgers really has Leicester playing. And I think a lot of the time, Brendan Rodgers often he gets caught up in this persona that he had. Everyone's heard of the stories of him at Liverpool and how he'd act on the training pitch and stuff like that. But for real, we're talking about one of the the greatest coaching minds in the modern game for me. The way he's brought the best out of players. We're looking at a 36-year-old Jamie Vardy playing like he's 26 still, and as I say, master tactician. This is going to be incredibly tough, Dan. Despite it being at home, I'm not really looking forward to this one, mate.
Nah, mate, it's really. Can we not change it to like 2 reasons why we can beat Leicester City? Do I have to try and come up with 5?
You got to come up with 5, mate.
No, it's going to be. But man, like we've seen Villa really turn up against the big sides at some point this season, and I know that they didn't have Jamie Vardy and stuff when we went away to them. But we've beaten Leicester already this season. We put in a fairly good account of ourselves in that game. And look, you never really know what Villa you're going to get from one game to the next. I think there has to be tactical changes. I think it's starting to come to the point where we'll almost certainly see a lot of Morgan Sanson in that game. I think there definitely needs to be midfield changes, and I think it's coming to a point now where I thought Sanson was our brightest player yesterday outfield. He only got 15 minutes, but I thought he did more in that 15 minutes than most players did in the entirety of the game. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some more. I hope we do, and because he's starting to really deserve more than the sort of 15 minutes here and there. So that's positive. And no, at the end of the day, mate, it'd be a really good game, hopefully, between 2 good teams. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to getting the best out of Villa, mate.
It's going to be a tough one because we essentially have 2 of the league's better counter-attacking teams, and it's always interesting how that game will develop as to whether Leicester will be happy to relinquish possession. There's so many potential outcomes and possibilities, which I'm sure you will try and cover, Dan,
Yep,
in
I will.
150 seconds.
100%.
So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, albeit it's a day late, massive apologies on that, but let us know in the comments below. Let us know how you're feeling about the Leicester game. Let's put this Brighton game behind us, man. All this chat about the Brighton game, that's been done now. We've got that out of the way. Let us know how you're feeling ahead of Leicester, and let us know as well if you are, you're glad that we're still seeing the podcast. Just wanted to clear that up. The podcast isn't going anywhere. We're just adding another facet to the channel for you guys, trying to keep things interesting, keep things fresh, and hopefully we can keep growing. So if you enjoyed, hit the like button, comment your thoughts below on the Leicester game, and if you're not, subscribe for more content. There's 59% of you who watch these podcasts who aren't subscribed on YouTube, so if you can subscribe, that'd mean the world. Up the Villa.